Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to talk about making bad decisions, and why it's actually kind of fun. And this is because I took my Dread mob, I keep wanting to say Redemptor mob, but now the Redemptors are outnumbered by Dreadnoughts that aren't Redemptors, so it's not really a Redemptor mob anymore, is it? I took the Dread mob to Warhammer World on Sunday to a meetup organised by Pandora's Bitsbox on Twitter. I got to see his Tyrannid, Hierophant, the Biotitan, the massive one with the 4 legs, face off against, I think it was 3 or 4 Imperial Knights. That was a fun best of 3, and that Biotitan is absolutely terrifying. So I got to see that, I got to meet up with a few people, and I got to have a game using the Dread mob. All of it. Nearly 2,500 points of it. I think it's sitting at, 2,468 it's sitting at. And that's with one of the Tech Marines kitted out with everything under the sun. Just because one of them, I want them to be a bit of a surprise should they ever actually get into combat. Actually, not in a good way to build them at all, total waste of points, but let's face it, an army consisting of 13 Dreadnoughts was never about efficiency or, gaming the system to try and make the best army possible. So I got to have a game with them, actually at full force, and it was against an unusual alliance of Iron Hands, Iandan, and Eldar, and Chaos Space Marines. Iron Warriors, in fact, which was not the most, I would say, lore-friendly combination of armies to go up against what is technically Loyalist Dreadnoughts. And given the Dreadnoughts were using Iron Hands, it was a bit weird having Iron Hands versus Iron Hands. I will say the Ghost of Ferrus Manus was most definitely on my side for that particular fight, because I actually rolled, I think, more than 0 6s on the Feel No Pain, so that was nice. But there's a couple of things that happened in that game, and they are things that really make no sense. Now, I've said before, I am not the kind of person to do the competitive thing. I'm the person to just play for the fun of it. Just playing the game is fun. Win or lose, it's not really about that for me, as you can tell by the stupid armies I build. I will say, before we get into it too much, that I might have actually underestimated how effective the Dread mob is. Not because it's a particularly good list, but just because it's comprised of toughness 7 and 8, and that's about it. There's not really anything less than that apart from the Tech Marines, and they are standing directly behind Dreadnoughts. So there aren't actually that many armies that are particularly equipped to deal with just that. For the most part, if you're running a balanced list, you might have trouble with something like that, and that seems to be the case so far. I mean, every game I've had so far has been against lists that have been balanced to deal with a bit of armour, some infantry, some characters, that kind of thing. But I don't have infantry, and I don't really particularly have strong characters either. As I say, the Tech Marines are just there to fix the Dreadnoughts and fill out HQ slots, so they just stay behind them, and that's about it. There aren't that many armies that are geared towards just high toughness enemies, which is all that army is. In that respect, they actually do okay, but that's not because it's a good list, it's because so far I haven't faced someone who is specifically built to deal with a list that is just stupid Dreadnoughts. One day I will have a game where someone will have taken that and gone, well, I know how to wreck your afternoon immediately, and it'll all go wrong. But for now, I'm still in the initial stages of putting them all down, and it being a case of, I brought an army that's actually, reasonable, and as such, I don't have quite enough anti-tank to cope with this shit, but we'll go for it anyway. And of course, it's important to point out that every game so far has just been a friendly mess-around game, which is my preferred type of game. So yeah, I had a game, and I had it against Leaky Cheese, Star Smythe, and Sergeant Smudge, all on Twitter. Leaky Cheese, of course, also YouTube channel, which I believe is in the list of quality YouTube channels on the homepage of this channel. And there were several points in that where I made incredibly questionable decisions purely for the hell of it. And they are all decisions that, to be honest, I think added up to the game just being more fun than if I tried to play it as okay, I'm here to win. I wasn't there to win. I was there to get my Dreadnoughts out, roll some dice. That sounds like a terrible euphemism for something, get my Dreadnoughts out, roll some dice, and just mess around, just enjoy the experience of actually getting to play with all of them at the same time, facing this funky, like, opposing force of Eldar and Space Marines and Chaos Space Marines. And so I made deliberately bad decisions a couple of times. The first truly bad decision that I made was one that I did 100% on purpose, and that was to waste a significant amount of firepower shooting 5 Eldar Rangers off the top of a building. Now, these Eldar Rangers were not a threat. They were not even remotely a threat. They were not even slightly a threat. They fired once, they missed all but one shot, and that shot did not wound. And if it had wounded, I think it would have done 1 damage. So even then, it wasn't even... It was just absolutely not worth the effort, because on the floor below them was a squad of Hellblasters, and they absolutely did hurt. They did a significant amount of damage to one of my 2 melee contemptors and one of the Redemptors. But despite the fact that the Hellblasters were the biggest threat, I absolutely loved the mental image, the little story that was the 5 Eldar Rangers seeing a just wall of Dreadnought starting to advance, taking their shots, and immediately getting met with... I can't remember how many shots I fired at them, but it was something silly. I think it might have been 2 Redemptors and 2 Mortis Dreads, which... I mean, the 2 Redemptors alone are like 36 shots, and then the Mortis Dreads on top. It was a withering hail of fire, and it was done for no reason other than that would be fun. That would be funny. And it made for a great moment. It made for a really fun moment, because it was a case of, I'm going to fire all of that at them. Really? Yep, I want them gone. Okay, that's going to be bad for them. Sure, let's go. And funnily enough, it did go bad for them. One of them did miraculously survive, but he ran away, failed the morale check, and that was the end of him. But it meant that the Hellblasters on the floor below, whilst merrily mowing this Contemptor down by a significant number of wounds, essentially suddenly got showered in red confetti as the Eldar Rangers above them, who were not really a threat to my force at all, got disintegrated, mostly out of spite, not even because it was helpful or useful, but just because I felt like it at the time. It was not a good decision. It was not a tactical decision, but it was a fun and funny thing to happen. Just a thing of, you know what? No, I don't like the fact they shot at them. I'm going to kill them. That's it. That was the whole level of thought behind it. And there are a couple of things like that. I mean, traditionally, when you've got melee contemptors, running them face first into the enemy, not trying to even stick to cover, is not necessarily a good idea. It's not the best idea. Perhaps try and at least minimise some of the damage towards them. I didn't do that. I ran both of my relic contemptors straight towards the other side of the board because I wanted them to get into combat quickly, and because I assumed they would probably die pretty fast anyway. I mean, when something like that is running towards you, you don't ignore it and shoot the thing behind it. You want to get rid of that particular thing. I mean, they're nasty in close combat, and I expected them to go down quick. One of them did. One of them entered combat with a unit of Wraithblades, I believe it was, with 1 wound left. And those Wraithblades then immediately annihilated completely said Contemptor. They just wrecked it straight off. It just died instantly, which I was expecting by that point. But then I had another decision to make for them. They had consolidated into a Redemptor. I could have fought with the Redemptor. I could have punched and, had like a manly fight. But I chose to do something that was maybe a little more tactical than that, but not because it was actually a particularly strong decision, more just because I liked the mental image of it more. The Redemptor withdrew and left them open to being fired at by the other 3 Redemptors that were on that side of the board. Now, the other 3 Redemptors were all equipped with Heavy Onslaught Gatling Cannons and Onslaught Gatling Cannons and Fragstorm Assault Launchers. So, that was 56 shots fired at that unit in total. In fairness, it took nearly all of them and the Fragstorm launchers as well. There was one particular guy in that unit that absolutely would not go down. He would not die. He did not care. He was standing out in the open, I assume filled with bullet holes, bits of armour just ripped off him, and he just did not care. That one guy was, like, far and away the most heroic thing on that board. The amount of fire that those took before that unit was finally wiped out was nothing short of obscene. Like, it was genuinely incredibly impressive. And that was another thing whereby, yeah, I could have just stood there with one of the Redemptors. I could have had it punch away. I could have had some others charge in. And to be fair, they probably would have done okay. But that was actually, despite that choice being like more tactically sound, it was still made for the wrong reasons. It wasn't because I wanted my guys to survive. It was because I love the idea of them being left in the open and just getting mown down. That was more fun to me. And it led to an actual, like, fun and cool story moment of them just taking this absolute nightmare storm of fire and nearly surviving. Like, it was close. It was stupid how close it was for them to actually survive. They nearly did it. And the thing is, if I hadn't have done that, then on the next turn, the fire dragons that were wandering around as well, they probably wouldn't have got to shoot one of the Redemptors and annihilate it in a single turn. Like, that's another thing where it was like a chain reaction of things. If I hadn't have withdrawn and fired with the rest of the force, essentially sacrificing that one Redemptor's shooting and combat and all of that, if I hadn't done that, the fire dragons wouldn't have come around the corner and then blown that Redemptor to shit. Like, they absolutely annihilated it in a single turn, which again was a much more satisfying moment than slogging it out in close combat. It was a choice made that was slightly more sensible, but for the wrong reasons, and it led to one of my Dreadnoughts getting absolutely annihilated instantly. And it was so much more fun because of that. Because those fire dragons came around and because they just annihilated one of the Dreadnoughts, that was a much better moment. It's like they made the sacrifice of the Wraithblades worth it with their shooting, with their actions. There's just been so many moments with this army where I think having a force that is so, like, I was like kind of off the grid when it comes to like the meta, when it comes to especially being competitive, it's opening the door for more situations whereby I can kind of look at it and just go, that would be really silly. Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, the whole army is silly. Like, the conversions are silly. I've got a Dreadnought with a gun for a face. One of them is holding an assault cannon bigger than himself. It's like, it's not a serious army. It's not a competitive, or at least it's not supposed to be, a competitive army. It's one done out of a desire to just do something fun and daft and different for the sake of it being fun and daft and different. And it's meaning that whenever I have a game with them, there are all these moments whereby there is the correct choice. There is the thing that you should do if you want to win. And then there is the thing that you could do if you want to do something that would make for a good moment. And I find myself swerving so hard towards just the point of making it a good moment. And it's been worth it every time. I've had more memorable moments with this army than I have with a lot of my others. I've had a lot more points where like a single decision has led to a chain reaction of just standout story moments that just wouldn't have happened otherwise. Like focusing fire on the wrong target intentionally, just to provide that movie style thing of, everyone shooting at Superman and then them just getting thrown over the wall or whatever. It's just like, it's stuff that it's not going to win you the game, but it provides more entertainment than winning the game would, for me anyway. Really, I'm liking this army more and more as I go along, because it's fun to challenge myself to create ever more insane kit bashes, but it's fun to play in a way that a lot of other armies haven't been. I've had more fun playing with this army than I think any other army I've had before. Everything's a lot more streamlined because so many of them have got just the same weapons and the same profiles over and over again. There's a lot of there's a lot of points whereby I can essentially justify the fact that I know that this is such a terrible idea, but then you've shown up with like 13 dreadnoughts and thrown them down. You've already had the terrible idea. That was the first terrible idea. All of the terrible ideas afterwards are just like icing on the cake. They're just going to make it more fun. That is just the core part of this army. And actually having it be the level of ridiculous that it is enabling me to make far more bad decisions. And so far, every bad decision I've made when it comes to this force has led to something that's been more fun or more interesting or more like cinematic or more like narratively impactful than if I'd actually been trying to play as efficiently as I could. It's a fun way to play. I know it's not for everyone, but it is for me, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And occasionally I do think to myself, oh, maybe I should look at doing the competitive side of things. But with this army especially, I just don't care if I win or lose. I just like having them on the board. I just like being able to put down such a daft force and run with it and make daft choices because, well, look at it. That was the first daft choice. Everything else just flows away from that. And yeah, it's a fun army to play. It's a fun army to mess with. I do say, I've said like you don't care whether I win or lose. I think so far I've won all 3 games I've had with them, although that's not really been intentional. That's just been like a weird side effect of just having so many dreadnoughts, I think, more than anything else. Well, the second game was very close. First and third, not so much. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'm still enjoying it. I'm still going to add to it. The current plan is to add 3 more dreadnoughts to it, to act as chaplain dreadnoughts. That's the next plan for it. But I can see myself not actually stopping this project just because it gets more fun and more silly as it goes on. And there's a lot to be said for just doing fun and silly hobby things. That got very rambly. That was not short in the slightest, was it? Oh well, you're used to it at this point. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any suggestions as to more dreadnoughts to add to this thing, or more conversions to do on dreadnoughts to add to this thing, then leave them in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all of that stuff. Click it if you like. Don't click it if you don't want to. And I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.